And that was one of the hardest plugins we made, actually. Next time, if you want to look a bit silly, you see an airplane going overhead, you bend your knees and go up and down. We just do the same thing over and over again, but we just put different knobs on it. You know?
Hello, me Kilohearties. Welcome, welcome. I'm George, and some of you may already know I've been working on a bit of a side project this year, a new series of big videos all about music and audio on a new channel called The Story of the Sound, in partnership with Kilohearts. Our newest episode is out now, all about reverb and ambience in music, and there's a link to that episode in the description. But we thought you might also be interested to hear the extended interview from that episode with Kilohearts co-founder Per Larsson. So without further ado, here he is.
My name is Per Larsson, and I'm a programmer and founder here at Kilohearts. I got into computers via video games. So I played the Nintendo 8-bit console when I was a kid, and it's like, this is the coolest thing I've ever seen. Like, I have to build these games somehow. And then I got a computer and I started learning programming and stuff like that. And I also dabbled a bit with music, but I'm not very good at it, actually. But I also was very intrigued with how is the music synthesized, how does the synthesizer work, and how does it work digitally. So I've been like splitting my time between games programming and doing audio stuff, and then I sort of merged them when I started making my own synthesizer.
Okay, so and then you were working in games programming for a while.
Yeah.
And you still are making games. You made an 8-bit.
I do make 8-bit Nintendo games, but that's not really a career.
Sure, but you did make some music for that, right?
Yeah.
And tell me just a little bit about that, because there's some very restrictive realities.
Right, so for video games. Yeah, for those old consoles, you have sound chips. You can't really go down to the timbre level.
Okay.
You can do pitch, but that's it. So you usually have just square waves or sawtooth waves or something very simple. And you can just wiggle the volume, maybe.
Right.
So it's chip music. It's the only kind of music I can sort of competently compose, I think.
Cool. And is there any concept of reverb or space in that kind of a system?
You can do some sort of echo effects, where you like play a note, wait a little bit, play it at a lower volume, so you get but you actually have to program in each echo manually. Here at Kilohearts, I program all sorts of things, but I specialize in DSP. But here at Kilohearts, everyone does whatever needs to be done.
What is DSP?
Digital signal processing. So it's what audio plugins do to process your audio. It could be whatever, implementing a delay, implementing a reverb, implementing a filter.
And that is what you need to be able to do in order to create digital or software-based reverbs, right?
Yes, exactly.
So you take an incoming signal, you process it, and out comes something else.
Yeah.
So what processing do you need to do to make a reverb?
Well, there are several ways to do it. We have two different reverb products. One algorithmic reverb that uses a feedback delay network.
Yeah.
So you have lots of delay lines. You send audio through them and take the output of all those delay lines, mix it all together and feed it back into the delay lines. So there's all sorts of crosstalk going on between.
You're making copies of the signal, delaying them in time, and then shifting them around in space and time and having things.
And as time goes on, you send an impulse through it. That impulse will bounce around there, have a good time, and sort of multiply and sort of become denser and denser and denser, which is exactly what you want for a good reverb.
Excellent. So that's an algorithmic reverb.
Yeah.
What is a convolution reverb, and how is it different?
A convolution reverb uses a process called convolution, where you have something called an impulse response, which is something you can record off a reverb unit or in a room or off a guitar cabinet, where you send a sharp impulse through it, like a balloon pop or something like that, and you record that tail, and then you can use that to place that reverb on any other sound.
So you record a short, sharp sound.
Yeah.
That audio then becomes the basis of some maths that you can map that shape onto a different sound, as if that sound were coming into the same system, the same space, the same.
Exactly. So you record an impulse in a church, and then you can place your sound into that church without having to be there and play that sound in the church. You can just do it in the computer.
And very basically, how does the maths work?
Basically, you have your impulse response, and what you want to do is like basically multiply every input sample of your signal with every sample in that impulse response, to sort of you get that impulse tail placed on every sample of your input.
So you come out with a result where every value, every sample is related to the samples of the impulse response in a way that makes the original sound like it was in that room.
Exactly.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
What does a convolution reverb like Convolver do for a user that an algorithmic reverb perhaps doesn't?
Well, it's kind of neat that you have these pre-recordings. Like people go out and capture these spaces of churches, concert halls, and like places that have really good acoustics. And you can place your music in that space without having to go there. So I think that's really neat.
Yeah, and is it very difficult to reproduce accurately a real space with an algorithmic reverb?
Yeah, I think that's kind of tricky because you have all sorts of different materials that absorb audio differently, absorb different frequencies, and the shape of the room can be very complex and stuff. Even if you just model the whole room, you have to do like this complicated path tracing to compute all the acoustics. So usually when we do algorithmic reverbs, they are not based on the space in that sense. They are more like just something that sounds good.
Excellent.
Yeah.
And the thing with Convolver that I learned about reverbs is that reverbs aren't just reverbs. If you've got a convolution plugin, you can do other things with it besides what we would listen to and hear as reverb, right? So what else can a convolution plugin do?
Yeah, so in the end it's just a filter.
Right.
So the echo in a room is just a filter response of the filter that is that room.
Right.
But a filter can be other things. It can be the resonances in a cabinet or a guitar, or the output of an equalizer can be an impulse response. Yes, you can send an impulse through anything really and just capture the essence of that. Anything that's what we call in the business linear.
Right, yeah.
So not distortions and stuff like that. Not things that evolve over time like wah-wah pedals or anything like that, but anything that's linear.
Yeah, linear meaning that it doesn't respond to the input signal differently depending on what the input signal is, right?
Right. Like it's independent of your gain, for example.
Right.
So putting the gain before or after the linear system is the same. Swapping the places of two linear systems is also the same. Like you can do A then B or B then A. They commute, I guess. Which distortions do not do, for example. Putting the distortions before or after your EQ, it's a very different sound.
Yeah. Okay, but a convolver can do anything linear as long as you have the right impulse response to do the math with.
Exactly.
Right. So you can do stuff that sounds more like delays or modulations or filters, like you say.
Yeah.
That's cool.
So very powerful in that sense.
Yeah.
You can record some really cool impulse responses, or you can even just synthesize them. You don't have to record them off something. You can just synthesize the sound and use that as your impulse response.
Sure.
So that opens up a lot of creative stuff you can do.
Yeah, right, absolutely, because then the math becomes the creative tool, doesn't it? You can record yourself speaking and use that as the impulse response, and suddenly your guitar playing sounds a bit speaky or...
Yeah, for our convolver we ship it with lots of like different impulse responses, like real spaces and cabinets and stuff, and also a lot of ones we just synthesized.
Yeah.
So I made one where it's just white noise and it starts silent and then goes loud and then goes silent again. So if you put anything through that, it will just smear out the whole sound. So anything that's like plucky will just be like a pad kind of ethereal sound. So
when we talk about the history of reverbs, the initial thing was just that sounds sound nicer in a nice acoustic, in a nice space. There's something more pleasing or real or organic about a singing voice in a church than in any other given room. When it comes to recorded music, you might think that the drier the sound, the more perfect it is, the better it sounds to the listener, right? In headphones or on speakers. But why don't we like listening to very dry recordings?
I don't know. That's a very good question. It seems like they don't sound real somehow. Something I noticed, you can make almost any synthesized sound, and then just put it through a convolution. We have one impulse response, which is just called live room, which is a room reverb. It doesn't have that tail. It doesn't sound like an echo. It doesn't sound like a reverb. It's just, but it instantly makes that sound like it's in a real space, and it sounds real. It sounds like it's coming out of something that exists rather than being a synthesized.
And is that just
sound.
a function of, as you say, it's a filter. It's doing different things to different frequencies, and so it sounds less.
Yeah, just
correct,
rearranges the phases a little bit. And I'm not sure what happens in our brain, but it somehow makes us instantly accept that as a real sound rather than a mathematical abstraction of sound.
And is it possible to go too far with these kinds of effects? What happens when you only hear the ambience, the reverb, and not so much the dry signal? Is that also as uncanny or as weird?
For convolver, you usually keep it at 100% wet. Because in the recording you have that reverb and the ambience, but you also have that direct signal coming straight from the balloon pop to the microphone, right?
Sure.
So that it has the sort of the dry version of the signal baked into the impulse response of. And I guess just having too much reverb, it just sounds a bit washed out, a bit undefined, right? But I don't know if you can go too far with it, as long as it sounds like you want it to sound, I guess.
Nice. Okay. So a couple of questions specifically about you then, as an engineer and as a creative, as a musician, as a human being. What interested you about convolution and reverb generally before you made these products? And did you learn anything about reverb and ambience by making them?
For me, it's mostly the challenge of just building it and making it work. And I knew that once we had a working convolution algorithm, then we could put whatever stuff in there and have it sound nice. But I leave that sort of to other people to figure out.
Is it a very challenging thing to do, or is it simple to do and difficult to make it perfect, make it your own, make it special?
For our algorithmic reverb, the feedback delay lines, that was quite easy to build, but took a lot of tweaking of exactly how long should this be and what's the matrix that mixes this for the feedback and stuff like that to make it sound good. For the convolver, it was more about the challenge of making it fast enough so it's low latency and very fast and light on your CPU and has a very even sort of performance characteristics, so it doesn't have spikes of CPU usage and stuff like that. And that was one of the hardest plugins we made, actually. So it went back and forth between me and my colleague Anders, working on it for a bit and then sort of giving up, putting it on ice first. Then someone else picked it up and hacked on it for a while and tried to make it work. And we iterated on it back and forth for a year, I think, before we had okay, this is now actually.
And that seems like a very non-creative challenge. It's not about the sound or the music or the result, but I bet it is really a creative challenge. You have to come up with new ways to think about the problems you're solving. Is that the case? Do you remember any specific decisions that took you forward?
A large thing that made it better was we had to implement our own Fourier transform functions, because usually that's definitely something you just download. Someone else has spent the time to make a really fast Fourier transform. But in this case we needed to make our own because we wanted to be able to compute only half of it and then wait a bit and then compute the rest later. So we had to do it from scratch, and just doing that just took a lot of time, and optimizing it and so on took a lot of time.
Excellent.
But once we had it, that was the key to make it flow really fast and work well.
Nice. And there's a couple of special features on convolver as well. You can stretch or squash the impulse response, the audio recording that you're using as the target, so to speak. There are a couple other things. What are the creative purposes of those, and what are the implications as an engineer? Do you have to do clever things to make that happen? So
mostly what we do is the impulse response is just a sample, right? So we can transform that sample before we use it. For example, if the user finds the reverb too long, they could just cut off the end of it to get a sort of gated reverb kind of feel, or if the attack of it is too harsh, you can fade it in or stuff like that, reverse it to do the reverse reverb. But all of that is just transformations you can do to sample before you process it and use it. The drawback of doing it that way is like you can't really modulate those things and do them real time. It's something you do, and then the computer has to think for a while, and then you hear the result. So it's something you can only do once.
Yeah, but it opens up all kinds of creative audio options for the user. So that's a lot of fun. What's the coolest reverb sound you've ever heard in a song or in your own work?
I'm quite a fan of reverbs, where you hear the reverb swelling up, and I think that's been used quite a lot for, especially in films. You have that on voice, for example. You can hear it sounds like someone is speaking to you from the other side.
Yeah, there's a Mars Volta track that does that very effectively. That always sticks with me. It's sort of
it like sucks in the thing. And it works really well on drums as well. You can
nice.
And also, as I mentioned, surf rock with the splashy reverb. It's almost like an instrument in itself. Because guitar amps have these spring reverbs in them often, right? Where you send the sound through some vibrating springs, and that sort of creates a kind of very crappy, kind of distinct reverb. And if you just kick the cabinet, then the springs will start vibrating. So you can actually just play the amplifier.
It really is an instrument, How is a convolver, a convolution reverb, different from a vocoder? They both take one sound and another sound, and there's a sort of a carrier and a so what is a convolver doing that a vocoder isn't, and vice versa? So
they are definitely related in that it takes one sound and like applies the characteristics of that onto another sound. But for the vocoder, you have two streams of audio coming in, right?
Rather than a pre-recorded response.
Exactly.
You have two live inputs.
Exactly. So you can't just do convolution inside the vocoder like that. Usually you want to take shorter snippets of the audio and do convolution with that, or do something else with analyzing the spectral content of the modulator and create a filter out of that. Or there are different approaches you can take, but it's a more constrained environment when you have audio that's changing, that's coming in on both channels at the same time.
It's really hard to get my head around sometimes the difference between a millisecond and a sample and in time, all these amounts of time that you're dealing with in designing an audio plugin. They are so small that it doesn't make sense to me, like thinking about the distance between stars and galaxies and whatever is too big to really make sense of. I guess you're thinking about this and making sense of it all day, every day. You need to really feel the difference between a single sample and a single millisecond and and does it make sense to you?
It's like a ladder of like on the sample level you have like what is the timbre and stuff like that, and then you go up a little bit, and then like what is the pitch. You go up
because that can't make any sense of a single sample. You need some time to develop a sense of pitch by frequency.
Exactly.
Right, so and
then you get to sort of what's the space, and then what's the rhythm on the next.
I've never thought about it like that. That's
and then
cool.
I guess the next is like what's the song and the tracks on the album.
And then what's the meaning of life?
Yes.
And, But I would find it really difficult, because I haven't practiced, to sit there all day thinking about those tiny amounts of time. Do you get used to it after a while? Does it make sense to you?
And mostly what we do is not listen to the output.
Sure.
We have a tool that shows us the output visually, so I can code and then rebuild, and I see what my change will be visually, because
get the scale right on your screen and
exactly.
It's okay.
Exactly. So often I zoom in and like I know there shouldn't be a little hiccup here, but there is something going on, and I know that I have a bug in my code. And then when my tool says it's mathematically correct, then I hope that it is, and that people can use it for music.
From a creative point of view, then, to go on another tack, what kinds of music are you interested in, and what are the sort of ambient characteristics of those? Do you have inspirations from your life of listening to music for what the plugins should be and what they should sound like?
I certainly have like ideas of sounds I've heard that I want our plugins to be able to reproduce, to be able to do, just milestones, like it should be able to do this kind of wailing lead sound, or this kind of reversed kind of weird sound, or this inharmonic sound I heard in a song or something like that.
Yeah. Do you have any examples off the top of your head? Any one thing that you said, we must find a way to do that?
Well, one thing, for example, is color bass, which is something that requires very specific and highly precise filtering. So that's can be a target. Like, we want to be able to do that kind of filtering. So just a low-pass filter is not up to the task. We need something more complicated. So that's one.
And to some extent, Convolver can approach those kinds of sounds, right? But we've even more so with Filter Table recently. That's a more focused approach to that kind of sound, right?
Yeah. And also upcoming vocoder will be able to do it.
Of course. But that reminds me of another question, which is if reverbs are really filters and Filter Table is really a filter, and is everything a filter in one sense?
Yes,
what does filter mean? Does it just mean anything that takes away from...
A distortion can be a filter, but usually what we mean when we say filters are the classic kind of EQ stuff, low pass, high pass. So technically Convolver is a filter, but I don't think about it as a filter. Has more to do with the space. Like the time scale is long enough that it's more about the echoes and the space and the rhythm of it rather than the frequency response,
Sure.
But yeah, technically it's the same thing. It's just a longer impulse response than most filters have.
I'm fascinated by reducing the processes that we perform on audio to the minimum, to their elements, and trying to figure out what actually are the elements of audio processing. How many different types of things can you really do to an audio signal? And as far as I understand it, you can sort of move it in time or you can move it in amplitude, and that's about it. Really.
Yeah, exactly.
Is there anything
and then there's like a spectrum in between there.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's mostly what we do. We just do the same thing over and over again, but we just put different knobs on it.
That's the fun thing. And it's obviously really a stupid thing to say, because it's not that simple, because those different things that you do and the different knobs that you put on create a totally different result for the user.
And also, the devil is in the details. Just parameterizing something in some way gives rise to some performance problem that we haven't foreseen, and we have to optimize for that specific case. So,
but it's
I don't
good to
think
know.
we'll run out of things to do.
Sure. No, it's good to know that all effects are the same effect, really, if you think about it hard enough. So, types of reverbs and ways of approaching reverb and space in music have grown and changed over the years. Have we finished exploring reverb now as a culture, or is there a new frontier to chase after?
I think for electronic music there's definitely these kind of synthetic reverbs that I think are not explored yet. Impulse responses that don't correspond to real space. I think you can do some really interesting stuff with those. Even if we have explored everything that's reverbs, there's always more to discover in the history of music, right? Because reverbs are such important to different genres of music. Like surf rock have this slapback delay, kind of very wet, splashy reverb on the guitar, and that's just that genre's sound,
Sure.
Or Phil Collins have these snares with a gated reverb on them to make the sound really big.
And there are a lot of vocal styles just born out of this sort of ambience that they're washed in.
Enya, that's a very reverby kind of sound to it. And I think more than anything, reverb is like something that applies to all kinds of genres, not just electronic music, but like defines the sounds of genres.
I just thought of something else stupid to say. Is it a sort of a condiment to music? Is it one of those things where, like you're cooking, you can then apply any sauce you like and it's a new dish?
Yeah, I guess so, yeah.
Maybe. Fun. Okay, cool. And what about things like 3D spatial audio processing? Are those new things to think about as processing power grows in consumer electronics and stuff?
I think for games and interactive stuff, there's a lot we haven't been able to do yet, but which is now becoming possible. Like ray-traced real-time reverbs, so you can actually get the sense of not just a space, but the space your character's in right now in the game. We used to do this in games where if you're in vent in Half-Life, for example, we add the vent reverb,
Right.
and that makes it echo as soon as you exit it in the different reverb space. But if you can actually ray trace and find the walls around you and apply a real-time reverb that matches that, you could even make a game for blind people where you just hear where you are in the space.
Wow.
I think that could be cool. And even just for any game, for just the immersion, I think it could be important.
Because the difference would be that you don't just hear a single version of the room's sound from where the microphone was placed for the recording of the impulse response, say, or for what the algorithm is trying to approximate. You are hearing every frame of the game, or every sample of the audio, ideally,
Right.
or hearing a new version of the sound of the room from the ear placement of the character as they move around. That's really,
And even the reverse of that, say you want to make a digital orchestra in a space.
Right.
They don't all have the same reverb because the instruments are placed at different locations in the room, right?
Yeah.
So
cool.
you'll be able to hear violins coming from there and piano coming from there. So that's something that's already possible because you can pre-compute all that. And doing it in real time where you can move stuff around, that's more complicated. But I think a lot of sense of, like once you start to understand echoes and reverb, then you'll hear them in the world. Like if you're driving your car and you're driving suddenly next to a fence or something on the side of the road, you'll hear that, like the sound changes. Something fun is like if you're standing and you hear an airplane going overhead, you'll hear it sort of changes the timbre as it moves above you, and it's sort of a flanging quality to it. And that's the difference between the sound coming from the airplane to your ears and the sound coming down, bouncing on the ground once and hitting your ears. Right. And they will phase cancel it to get like a flanging sound. Right. So next time, if you want to look a bit silly, you see an airplane going overhead, you bend your knees and go up and down, and you hear the same flanging sound as when it passes over. It's really cool.
Yeah, of course, that makes sense now I think about it, because there's a version coming directly to your ear and a version bouncing hundreds of meters away into your ear, and then much, much closer as the plane approaches.
Exactly.
That angles, that's fantastic.
And like, before I realized this, I would just guess that that's just how airplane sounds, or like that bounce would be so small that it wouldn't matter, but it like matters hugely to how you perceive that sound.
This is something I'm realizing a lot about reverbs and ambience in the sounds that we hear, is that we're not aware of how much we're hearing something other than the direct input. When we're having a conversation here, I'm hearing your voice, you're hearing mine. You think it's just mouth to ear, ear to mouth, but it's actually mouth to wall to ceiling to floor to everywhere in the room, and you're hearing 50% of non-direct, and it's incredible how different it is if you're having the same conversation in an anechoic chamber. It doesn't make any sense at all.
Have you been to an anechoic chamber?
No, I would like to.
Oh, me too.
Yeah.
I think that would be really fun to have the sort of baseline of reality where you have no echoes, because it's really hard to get away from them.
Yeah, exactly. But I think that's a big part of why we like echoes in our music, because it sounds really sort of disconcerting, really unnatural to have a sound as dry as we can make them electronically. So it doesn't sound like anything we could realistically hear in the world.
And it also gives you a lot of options when mixing, because just how much reverb you blend onto sound positions it away from you, right?
Sure.
So you can pan things left, right, you can change the volume, but you can also like place it further away or closer to the person listening.
Not now necessarily to do with reverb specifically, but when it comes to games and when it comes to audio products and other types of things maybe, do you have lots of ideas that you're still looking forward to, or are you just sort of...
We definitely have more ideas than we have time to implement. And also when computers is getting faster and faster and faster, the space of things you could conceivably do also grows. But I think the big innovations is not like new algorithms for DSP as much as it is like presenting the power of that DSP to the user in a way that they can utilize it and understand it. So I think we have a lot more to gain from good UI design than we have from good DSP design. I mean, there's a lot of power in DSP, but our job is to like hand that power over to the users somehow. That makes sense, you know.
Yeah.
To make it into a creative thing rather than like a math-heavy thing.
Can you give me an example of that to clarify a little bit? What's a bad UI design and a good UI design, and how does it make the same piece of DSP better or worse?
Just something you can do with the UI, for example, is have some sort of visualization of what's happening. If you can see the waveform that you're working with, then you suddenly understand it on a much deeper level than if you just hear it, for example.
Right.
So you'll be able to understand what the knobs do a lot faster. So that's something you can do. And also not overwhelming the user with options, but just presenting the most relevant stuff up in front and center. But yeah, I don't have any killer stuff like do this and your UI will improve. It's all about like iterating on it and like trying to put yourself in the user's shoes and like knowing who your ad user might be, if they are an expert or if they are a novice.
I think that last thing you talked about is, from what I've seen, the key to Kilohearts is it's not just about making the coolest, craziest noises. It's about making them accessible and functional and a pleasure to use. And, that's obviously it's important to have a cool noise in the system somewhere, but having a cool noise that it's an absolute pain to get to is worse than not having one at all. Hey, fabulous. Oh, well, thank you so much for taking the time.
Yeah, this was fun.
It was fun, wasn't it?